Good morning, everyone. As you know, my name is Corey Honey. I'm the Sheriff of Butte County. Welcome to our press briefing for this week. It's good to have everybody back. I think some significant things have taken place and are worthy of a press briefing, which is why we decided to hold one today. I want to start off by reiterating to everyone that our evacuation warning is still in effect. As you know, we had our immediate evacuation order. Then we moved that to an evacuation warning. That allowed people to come back into their homes and residences with the understanding that should there be a need to issue an evacuation order, we would do that. So it's important that they maintain situational awareness and be ready to evacuate if the need arises. I know that there's a lot of people who are wondering when we will lift the evacuation warning. And I want people to understand that there are basically 3 milestones that we have been looking at to achieve before lifting that warning. Good progress is being made on those milestones. First off, we were looking to the reduction of the lake level to 850 feet or below. I am pleased to note that that has occurred, and that is continually monitored by DWR to make sure that those lake levels are at a level that will allow for the capacity. And if you'll allow me 1 second, I'm gonna mute this. There we go. If DWR is working very hard at making sure that the lake level is. Come over and take care of this for me, if you would, please.
Sorry.
That's okay.
You gotta tell them to mute their phone.
Please mute your phones.
Yes, that'll work.
Just killed
Okay,
it.
Yes,
thank you.
there we go.
Perfect. If you don't come to the press conference, I guess that's the way it is, right? So thank you all for being here. Starting again, milestone number 1 was reducing the lake level down to 850 feet or below. DWR is working very hard at keeping that so that we have plenty of capacity in the lake to deal with any inflow. That's done, milestone number 1. Milestone number 2 was the completion of the fortification in front of the emergency spillway so that in the hopefully unlikely event that that has to be utilized, it will prevent any further erosion, which ultimately caused us to issue the evacuation warning in the first place. And I am told by Director Croyle that that is completed. The primary fortification is completed. Now they're moving on to secondary fortification beyond the area where they first were working. That's a very good sign. And the third milestone, which I'm hoping that we can make some significant progress today, as Director Croyle will explain, is the removal of the debris below the primary spillway so that we can get the Hyatt powerhouse up and running and have another way to discharge water out of the lake. With those 3 milestones being complete, I'll feel comfortable releasing the evacuation warning. But please keep in mind that when that happens, it's important to stay aware of what's going on and be prepared, because this emergency situation will continue until the primary spillway is fixed and there's no longer the threat of a spring runoff creating a situation where we have water coming in to the lake that we can't get out as efficiently as possible. So we're in it for the long haul, and I'd ask the public to be aware of that and certainly patient with us as we go forward. As I mentioned, Director Croyle will be explaining that DWR is entering into a critical phase of remediation, which will address the ability of the powerhouse to operate again. Now, it's important to understand that they have a limited window of opportunity to complete this work. We have to ensure that this very critical work to address this emergency situation is not impeded. Now, there's been concern about private and or unauthorized drones being flown in the area where remediation efforts are being conducted. Those remediation efforts include the use of air operations, helicopters to assist with the remediation and observation of what's going on. So to ensure that unauthorized drones are not interfering with air operations assisting with the remediation, I have reiterated and issued the following order. This will be released to the media after this press conference, and it will be put up on our social media pages. The order is, pursuant to 409.5, the area bounded by the perimeters of the temporary flight restriction issued by the Federal Aviation Administration on February 18, 2017, as specified in NOTAM number 7/5803, is hereby closed to private and unauthorized aerial vehicles and remote piloted aircraft, collectively known as drones. This closure will remain in effect until May 13th of 2017, which is the duration of the temporary flight restriction issued by the FFA, or until I release it. The closure has been ordered to ensure that the private and unauthorized drones do not interfere with ongoing operations at the dam to mediate or remediate this emergency situation. Now, I understand that people are interested to see what's going on. I know that they're interested in seeing the damage to the primary spillway, but there will be lots of photographs and videos taken, and I am assured by Director Croyle that that will be posted up on DWR's Facebook page, so everybody will have an opportunity to see what's going on. If you're unfamiliar with the area that the FFA restriction includes, you can go to the FAA's website, and they will give you the coordinates of that area as well as the elevation. Next, I want to tell you about a lot of great work that has been done over the course of the last week with the assistance of CAL FIRE Incident Command Team 4, our local Butte County Fire, CAL FIRE, the Sheriff's Office, the City of Chico, City of Gridley, and our other public safety partners in developing a contingency plan in the event, and hopefully it's the very unlikely event, that we ever have to issue another evacuation order. Yesterday I was advised that the plans and the map that outline what the evacuation would look like have been completed. We'll be meeting with the folks who have been working on that today to finalize that. We will then begin working on a plan to roll that out to our community and let them know what that plan is. That will include, of course, the assistance of our local media in getting the word out and getting the information out. We will also have a social media campaign, and then we'll be scheduling community meetings within the various areas that are affected so that everybody has an opportunity to look at the plan, understand the plan, and understand the key early warning triggers that we would implement should it become necessary to do that. That's been great work, and I think ultimately it's going to help us facilitate an evacuation again if that should ever be necessary. But based on the good work that's being done by DWR, Army Corps of Engineers, private contractors, I am optimistic that we won't. And just the last note I want to say, over the last couple of days, we've received a lot of positive feedback and support from members of our community. I can't thank the members of our community enough for their patience, for their understanding, and for the support that they've given both to my office and I know to DWR as well as the other agencies who are working to get this situation in hand. Thank you very much. Bill?
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. Again, Bill Croyle with the California Department of Water Resources. First, I kind of want to start where the Sheriff just left off. I wanted to, on behalf of the department, under our unified command, our contractors, etc., I wanted to make sure we acknowledge the really the kindness of this community, the cookies, the snacks, the fruit that's been provided to our incident command posts and pushed out into, especially to those up on the dam and down below the various structures, the powerhouse and stuff, so that some of our people that have been working many, many days and many, many hours have the benefit of some of the kindness of this community. Certainly the Oroville Hospital, some of the local individual community members, again pushing those kind gifts to our teams has been really appreciated and keeps us kind of going. It helps us also kind of get a feel for where we're at in making sure that we are really meeting and addressing the concerns of this community. I also wanted to acknowledge, as we get into these kinds of events under our unified command, we will mission task and pull in different agencies under our state, our sister state agencies through different ways. And so this past week, as we've had an awful lot of truck traffic in the communities, Caltrans has kind of stepped up and been able to address and working with local government to address some of the impacts to our roads. So as we work through this time of year, and we'll stay on top of that and continue to work with our Caltrans sister agency and then our local agencies to make sure we're addressing those road concerns. Next, I want to kind of give you kind of walk through where we're at today, but then also kind of take you through kind of a chain of events that will be happening. It actually started earlier this morning, and then we'll go through the next 5 to 7 days. First of all, our current inflow into the reservoir is about 20,000 CFS. It's been very cool here in the region, but also up the watershed. So again, we've had a couple little storms go by, but they've been very light. I've heard from a community member yesterday, they were up the canyon. It's actually snowing on them, not a lot, but a little bit. But it's cold here this morning. That's kind of the typical weather pattern that we see coming up here in the next 4 or 5 days. And the 10-day forecast actually looks fairly dry. The snow level bounces around a little bit, but it really doesn't seem like we're going to have much rain, which is really good news for what we have in front of us here in the next 5 to 10 days. So our outflow this morning was 50,000 CFS. So I'll talk a little bit more about our ramp down that we're doing now that started at 645 in just a minute. Our current reservoir elevation is 838.5. So 838.5 feet, which is down again from that 901 that we had a week and a half or so ago. Our current elevation of water of the diversion pool that's stacking up against the Hyatt Powerhouse is 254 feet. So that's kind of not quite the high, but close to the high that we've seen on that power plant here during this incident. One of our major goals today over this coming week, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, is removing enough debris and opening up that channel so we can get that water surface down in front of that powerhouse somewhere down 235 to 232. It's a major objective for this week. It's a very aggressive objective, and so we got to get in there later today, go 24-hour operations to remove that debris. So just kind of a notice, we're kind of looking back over February to see what our weather has been and then what we might expect here in the future. Some interesting facts are coming out, and more of this information will be pushed out as we have a little bit more time to kind of look at our current situation. But it's interesting when you look at, on average, the inflow into this reservoir. We looked at 570% of average is what's happened over the last number of days for this month. And so that's a heck of an inflow into this reservoir, and certainly has been one of the challenges that we've dealt with an impaired spillway. So to me, that's a good reminder for all of us that Mother Nature is still in the room. We're trying to develop our contingency plans for what we have now, as well as spring runoff, and making sure we have enough storage and we can manage our spillway, and hopefully our powerhouse soon to kind of take on any of the storms that may be coming here in the coming weeks. As the sheriff said, we've completed all 4 of the primary work areas under the emergency spillway. We continue to what we call our phase 2 work, which is to continue to assess the site below the work that's been done. And what they're doing and have been doing is building in little benches that are kind of 5-foot steps, loading rock, We're not currently pouring concrete in with that rock yet, but they're again going through accessing those areas, preparing the sites, and placing the rock. Quite a bit of rock has moved into that area, so again, we want to make sure if we had to use that spillway, that we're doing everything we can to mitigate that concern with erosion, and we'll continue that effort until we feel confident where we are in the hydrologic cycle with the snow melt, etc., that we take no risk of going over that particular spillway. Again, our flood fight at the Hyatt plant continues to be successful. We have our redundant systems and contingency plans in place, and with the reduction in flow starting today, we see the risk will go down to that plant, but certainly our focus is really removing that water from the front of that plant and hopefully reoperate the plant later in this week, if not next week. There has been and will continue to be a number of air operations related to our activity today, tomorrow, and the rest of the week. But here on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll also have additional air operations with regard to making improvements to the power lines to the Hyatt Power Plant. So by Thursday, we should be able to have better connections to the grid, and that allows us, if we can get the water out in front of it, we can operate the plant itself to maximum capability. So what I want to do now is talk a little bit about what we're doing right now and over the next 12 to 18 hours. So again, as of 6:45 this morning, we started a ramp down process on the flood control spillway, where somewhere around noon we'll be at zero flow off or from the reservoir over the spillway into the diversion pool. At the same time, as that goes to zero, we're ramping flows up out of the thermoladal afterbay to make sure that we, again, manage those downstream water conditions in the Feather River. So there's a step-down graph that we have with an awful lot of engineering behind it to make sure that we can make those changes, minimize the threat to the levee systems in our environment, our fish resources, as we move through this period. So at the end of the zero flow environment, we'll maintain our minimum fish flows at the diversion dam of about 620 CFS, maintain the water supply, ensure the water supply going into our fish hatchery to make sure that we protect that resource, and then we'll continue to use the afterbay to keep the river moving down from 30,000 down to 10 to 5, and ultimately this afternoon on the Feather River will be at 2,500 CFS. With the amount of water we have stored in the various pools and dams, being thermoladal afterbay, the power pool, the diversion pool, and the water up there by the Hyatt plant, we believe, about 7 days worth of storage to be able to work through this period and maintain those minimum fish pools. On a graphic, we're planning on kind of a 5-day construction period, and we'll reassess our water supply conditions throughout this period every day, in the morning and the evening, to make sure that we don't have any surprises as we move through this period. At some point, we either open up the pool and making sure we can get the power plant up and running. If we can fire one unit up, that's about 1,500 to 1,700 CFS. Again, that would give us our fish bypass flows and enable us to recharge some of our other storage. At some point, we might have to go back to using the spillway. One of the challenges that we have during this event is really better understanding the existing flood control spillway. We want to better understand if we can operate it at a level lower than 50,000 CFS. So if we can get into a range of 20 or 25,000 CFS without further damaging the spillway, that'll allow us to really make much better progress on managing our reservoir elevations. Hopefully the construction and debris removal crews can stay a little closer to the toe of that and continue to remove that material, thereby allowing us to better operate the Hyatt Power Plant and ultimately prepare for the recovery of the spillway itself. We're attacking the debris pile by 3 different angles, from the upstream, downstream, and from the west side of the pile. The hope is that we can get out on the pile as soon as the water comes down with some cats, move some material around to set up some channels and better access roads, and to make that area safe. Again, we're going to focus on removing debris. At the same time, during this zero flow environment, we have a number of geotechs, geologists, and engineers trying to get access to this area to really look at the geology. If there's things that we can do to better protect the channels that are there in the short term, but really start collecting the information that we need to develop our various alternatives to rebuild or recover this spillway. So we're going to start off with a lot of drone work this morning. So the drones will be flying multiple missions at the same time. That's why it's so important that we don't have any other resources in the air that are not part of the air operations and controlled by our air command. We're also going to have a helicopter stationed over the spillway that will photo document the change in flow conditions throughout this event. That's super important for our engineers, our geotechs, to better understand the spillway itself. And so again, that helps us better answer, do we have to maintain a 50,000 CFS, or we can do something a little lower? But that means we'll have helicopters above, drones underneath. We have safety people monitoring all over the place. We have our barges, our excavators down on the dirt pile. We have a lot of resources moving around, monitoring this situation. So our safety people have on high alert to making sure we don't have any third-party interference, because we have too many safety issues here with regard to helicopters as well as our own drone work. If we have to shut down because of a third-party drone that's in our airspace, that affects our public safety of our first responders as well as the community of Oroville. So if we have to delay what we're doing here today, that increases the risk to public safety. So I would ask, if you know of somebody that wants to fly a drone or is flying a drone, please encourage them not to. The sheriff and I are working very closely with our safety teams. Again, if we see a drone, we'll have to make a call on whether we shut down or not, and we'll aggressively go after that third-party drone to make sure that we can get back into operation as fast as we can. That's very important. So this is a big day. There's going to be a lot of changes. Safety is our number one concern today. We've been very lucky with all the equipment, our water conditions, the long hours, a little bit of lack of sleep on many, many people. And so our goal here is to make sure we move through this environment when being safe and making sure we don't hurt anyone. This is a changed condition. The environmental resources and fish are high on our screen. There's a lot of effort going into kind of planning this, and so the various regulatory agencies and our resource management agents are tuned up on what we might expect. A lot of work has been done. Yesterday they flew the Feather River. They'll fly the Feather River again today to make sure we understand where those pools might be that might strand fish. So there is a fish rescue plan in place. Today we'll do a lot of monitoring as the water level comes down. There may be an opportunity for fish rescues today, but if not, it will be tomorrow, and then we'll continue as we are in this low flow environment. Again, as we move through this next 5 to 7 days, our goal is to aggressively attack this diversion pile. The more we can dig this channel and open up the Hyatt power plant, that allows us, again, another dial that I've talked about in the past, that allows us to manage those inflows into the reservoir and ultimately stay more on a drier environment at the bottom of that spillway. And again, we can start kind of completing our response phase of this and then getting set up for a recovery. We will have a series of technical teams that are moving into the spillway chute if it's deemed safe here in the next couple days. And that data, again, is needed to better understand, again, that spillway, and then, of course, provide that foundation for the geotechnical and geology information that we can to make our selection for what the recovery solution might be in the future. We want to make sure that there's a lot of monitoring going on today and tomorrow because of our safety concerns. Communication, we'll have a lot of runners moving data and people back and forth throughout our project area, which goes from the top of the spillway, the emergency spillway, the bottom, in and around all the heavy equipment that's working on the debris pile, as well as the Hyatt power plant, as well as the diversion dam and the forebay dam. So we have a lot of people moving around, a lot of communication going on. And so I would ask if you have any questions or want any pictures, please work with our PIO staff so we can get you what you need. But I guess I would ask, to the extent possible, make room for us to move around as fast as we can. Once this kind of gets into a zero flow environment tomorrow, then I think a little less stress will come off everyone that's kind of focused on better understanding the spillway and that debris pile. So I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And we'll use.
Why is it important to? I mean, the assumption is if it can handle 50,000 or 100,000 CFS, why would lowering the flows cause potential problems on the spillway?
That's a good question. So what happens is, under certain flow regimes, the water will shoot off the end of the spillway a certain distance, and it falls into a plunge pool. And so if the water doesn't hit the plunge pool but hits the base of the mountain and erodes the mountain before it hits this plunge pool, then the fear is that erosion would continue up and then cause more concrete to be eroded off the end of the spillway, then eating the spillway back towards the dam. So it's been very stable for about a week and a half now, which we're really pleased with. It's taken a lot of water over the top of that spillway, but the goal is to better understand where that trajectory lands. Is it in the plunge pool? Does it land on the solid metamorphic rock, or does it land on something that could erode? That's what we're going to learn later today and tomorrow.
Yeah, so where are you going to put all the dirt and the debris and all the stuff that you're going to dredge out of that channel?
Yeah, a number of spoil sites have been identified. One is just across the tail race from the Hyatt power plant. It's a long linear bench that's towards the lower part of the dam itself. That'll be a lot of the material that comes out of the upstream side of the debris pile. There's another stockpile that's set up that goes kind of up underneath where the emergency spillway outfall was, higher on the bench, so it'll be out of any kind of potential area that would wash away in the future. And then there's also another place that's down closer to the diversion dam that's more of a staging area. So a lot of barges will be moving material back and forth so that material can be removed and taken to those spoil sites.
Maybe one more. So you're going to have the spillway shut off between 5 and 7 days, right? Hope that's
Right.
more, right? If we can get by that. How much do you expect the lake level to rise during that time? What's your modeling?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's about, in fact, we have the graphic over here that kind of depicts when we're shutting down, how long we expect to run based on our latest models. It also includes the inflow into the reservoir. So again, it looks like we don't have much weather and it's kind of cool. So the inflow should be pretty low or consistent with what we're seeing now. So it looks like right now that number is somewhere around 845, or no, 850. And so I think yesterday it was looking like it was 855, but I think we expect 850. Again, we'll be looking at that every day. One of our kind of key triggers is 860. It's kind of an artificial number, but that's a number based on our snowpack that we have upstream, our current reservoir conditions, our ability to manage the spillway. That's kind of a number that if we hit 860, we would probably want to go back to a spill, even if we had to. We're making great progress on the debris pile. Again, that kind of gets there's a number of different decision points. One is fish flows, one is reservoir elevation, and then one is can we operate the Hyatt power plant. Our goal is, again, to better understand the dynamics of that spillway. So if we can move less water off the spillway, we could actually last longer, with water off the spillway and give us more time to get Hyatt power plant back up. On that graphic, and I can get more into this after this is over, but there is a scenario right now if we can't feel comfortable operating the spillway below 50,000 CFS, there's a 2-day window where we fill up we basically dewater the water that we've stored, making sure we replenish our fish resource supplies, and then we'd have to, again, start ramping back down. And we don't want to get into this yo-yo thing, where we're filling up, ramping down, filling up, ramping down. So again, that's why it's so important that we get in there in the next couple days and better understand the structure of the flood control spillway, as well as the geology that's down under in that plunge pool. The top of the spillway by the dam itself, or down farther. Yeah, so we have continuous monitoring at where the spillway has been damaged. That area has got a number of different survey points. We have visual monitoring. The drone flights fly every day, as well as up at the spillway itself. There's a lot of survey markers, strain gauges have been put in place. Again, 24/7. We have, I think, 8 cameras located now, so we can record all this information. There's a lot of people that are out walking and looking at all the little joints and stuff with regard to the spillway, or the radial arm gates, the spillway, the bridge over the spillway. There's a lot of truck traffic. That's why it's so important for the truck traffic to be 5 miles an hour or slower over that, because of the dynamic loads that we're seeing on that bridge. Everything's looking really good, but that doesn't mean we're going to still aggressively monitor and report any changes that we might see. So what we have a lot of people back in Sacramento running a lot of models for us and looking at the historical documents and kind of, what should we expect with what we kind of see as a wet season, right? We've got plenty of snow right now. And so one of the things that comes up in this conversation is our sun angle right now. So we probably need to get another 10, 15, 20 days before the sun gets a little higher, and then we would see a more typical snow melt. Right, and so that's great news for us, because again, with the little, we shouldn't expect to see the inflow due to snow melt really occur here in the next 10, 15 days. Not that we shouldn't be ready for anything that could come at us, but again, the weather conditions are looking really great. And then that 10, 15 days out is when we start to see more of that snow melt, but it just doesn't happen. It kind of depends on the air temperature, wind, and then whether it's cloudy or sunny. And so that'll start going up over time. We're kind of looking at some of our numbers that just came in just before this meeting. And so for March, on a wet season, wet snowpack, we're looking at like 38,000 cubic feet per second is kind of average inflow. And so that's an important number. And that number as it goes down to, I think it's 12 for June. And so again, if we can get the Hyatt power plant up and running about 15,000, that takes care of half of what we would see. And then we have that flood storage that we would have that we can manage throughout that season. So we do anticipate the need to use the flood control spillway, be able to make it through that snow melt and any potential weather we come. Excuse me? Well, I guess I do. Subject to, right now, I need to make sure I have fish flows down the Feather River. We want to keep those flows up at a level that maintain those important environmental resources. And with the weather that we have in front of us, I fully expect to use that spillway. Now, if we can get the Hyatt plant working, then again, it'll be less. And that's where the key is on how much water we can spill off the spillway, and we can still stay working at the bottom of that, the spillway in the debris pile.
What do you expect to get the Hyatt out of house?
What do I expect? I'd love to have it up and running by Thursday or Friday, but I can't give you a specific date, because we got to better understand the channel dynamics that already exist. There is a channel, there is water flowing from the pool up against Hyatt down into the diversion dam, and we'll better understand that later today and tomorrow morning. That'll give us a better idea how fast that water comes down, if it goes down far enough, But again, that's why the contractors are working so hard to give us a pretty good sized channel, not just for now so we can start one unit, but so that we can again continue to drop that water surface and get on to a second or third unit spinning at Hyatt.
Why was it deemed unoperational in the first place, Ken?
So I didn't hear the question.
Why was it deemed unoperational in the first place?
The Hyatt power plant? It's a good question. What happens is the power plant has to be able to release the water from the turbines in an environment so it's kind of free from any kind of back pressure, right? And so when the water has come up on the tail race, then that puts back pressure on the turbines and you can't operate it safely. Okay, so that's one of our key safety things, because for those that want to do web searches, go look at what happened in Russia. And so it can make a mess of your infrastructure, and so we are definitely not going to operate this power plant until we know it's absolutely safe. And so we need to drop that level of that water our goal is 235, gives us one plant. And so that's about 1,700 CFS. If we can get down to 232, that can give us up to 3. And then we're bumping up about 3,000 CFS. That's full blast, and so we might not go full blast right away. That's why it's been so important for the flood fight to be successful at the plant. So with a little bit of cleanup, we're ready to do that. So if we can get the water surface down, we want to go through that process to open that plant up and turn it back on.
For the auxiliary spillway, I know there's been lots of rock and concrete and sandbags in that area. Have you guys been able to test any of that since you guys put it in there? I know they haven't been above 100%, but have you guys been able to test what your masses are?
Have you been able to test the work you've done at the top of your auxiliaries at the emergency spillway?
Test the work.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean by testing. So this was emergency work that playing a lot of rock down and gluing it all together with a lot of concrete. We believe that the method that was used to basically armor that surface, I believe is pretty amazing what we've done. So I'm not sure what you mean by testing it. We're going to continue to monitor it and make sure it's ready to go, if we had to take water over the top of that.
Some of the turbines are not operational. Do you know if they're all operational?
Are the turbines in the Hyatt power plant?
Aren't all of them operational?
No, I think we have one that's been down for maintenance. And so I think we have 5 of the 6 that could be made available if we have the water surface right. Right, Joel? Right.
Any other questions?
So does the water level down at the power plant, does the turbine have to be, basically, for people like me who aren't very smart, does the turbine have to be out of the water? Is that why the water level has to be what it is? So the water's not coming back?
Well,
in, it's spinning out?
the turbine is in a building, and its exhaust pipe where it exhausts the water that's going through the turbine goes out into the tail race. So that's the part, the water's up against that tail race, which is really water against the turbine. There are what they call stop logs in there that prevents a lot of that water from going back up. This plant is like 5 stories tall, and 4 of it's underground. so you got to waterproof the whole thing to make sure that we don't have it leaking in and flooding out the plant. And so, but the tail race is the important. It needs to be clear, because once that clear, then the turbine can push the water out and be free of any obstruction to be able to operate at full blast.
And then there's, sort of back to the question, there's no real way to test the repairs on the downside of the emergency spillway short of water, short of the lake getting full of water flowing over, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, if you want to, I don't think we don't want to take water over the top of the emergency spillway if we have to, but that would be the only way that you could test it for real. But that's why we put in there's an amazing thickness of rock and concrete that have been in there and glued together, but you can't really test it without actually using it. I don't think we want to do that.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Good. You guys did great.
You always got to have a couple of pretty faces.
You guys nailed it.
Yeah.
I don't think we've met. I'm Corey Hunt, Sheriff.